This is our second of our science exploration series. They'll be every Friday before our home football weekends. We definitely encourage you to attend all of them. It's kind of a fun way where we can drop a little bit of a science on you and have a little bit of fun. There's a QR code that when it flips up, you're supposed to scan, and if you get selected, what they're going to do is you win a prize, and what that prize is actually pretty awesome. You get front row, 50-yard seats to the football game, and you actually get to coach for 1 quarter of the game tomorrow. Okay, honestly, you just get like a little token from the College of Science, but please use that for their sake. And so with that, I think we'll get started. So this is the QR code. You'll see it on, so just use your little phone. Oh look, Duck Dynasty, that's one of the series come up. I'm surprised we're going to have Greg for that one. All right, let me switch over to our presentation here real quick. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. My name is Sean Kassen. I'm the director of the Parseghian Medical Research Fund here at the University of Notre Dame. A little bit of background about myself. I came to Notre Dame in 2003. I came here as a graduate student in biology. I ended up working actually 5 years for Dr. David Hyde in studying zebrafish neuron regeneration. So eye regeneration in zebrafish, but I realized really quickly I was kind of tired of working with fish, and I was tired of working in a lab where there's no windows, so I transitioned in my career path and ended up working in the development office, where I oversaw the fundraising efforts for the College of Science, and that's where I got to meet Greg Crawford, who I'll introduce in just a moment. One of the key things that we were fundraising for was rare diseases, and so in 2016, when the Parseghian Fund Parseghian Foundation merged with the University of Notre Dame, I left that position and I ended up running that, and I'll kind of go over those details in just a moment. But there's only, really to get things started, there's only 2 pieces of science that you really need to understand for this talk. And the first is, what is a rare disease? So we all know common known diseases such as breast cancer or COVID or Alzheimer's. What about diseases that affect, that you may have never heard of, such as Niemann-Pick Type C or glycogen storage disorder 3? These are what we call a rare disease. So in the United States, we define a rare disorder as something that affects less than 200,000 patients. That's not really what we're talking about when we talk about what we do a lot here at Notre Dame. We're looking at what we call an ultra-rare disease. So something that affects maybe less than 5,000 patients, or in our case in the Parseghian Fund, 500 patients. Or what about a disease that affects just 5 patients in the United States? Well, at Notre Dame, we have a home for them as well, and that's with our rare disease. But actually today is, I would say, a very special day for us in the Parseghian Fund. I had 2 presentations today. One was just the regular presentation, and one was the celebratory presentation. And I'm delighted that I can actually share with you today the celebratory presentation. And to do that, I need to tell you about the Parseghian Fund. And it all starts with this person right here. So this is Eric Parseghian, who all of you know. He was a player for Miami University. He also was a head coach from 51 to 55. And then he came to the University of Notre Dame in 1964. And and somebody who actually played for him is right here, Pat Starr. And at the university, you see his accolades. We know he's a 2-time national championship coach. But the focus of today's talk is actually his second legacy, and that is how him and his family have been affected by this rare disease. So this is Coach Parseghian with his 4 grandchildren, 4 of his grandchildren right here. And this is Cindy Parseghian. Cindy is his daughter-in-law. And as the story goes, so sometime in the early 90s, they started noticing some issues with their youngest son, Michael. He was, playing with kids in the playground, just wasn't keeping up with them, he was running around, then he would trip and fall. And, they said, I think there's something wrong with Michael. Let's take him to the doctor. What all doctors did at that time is, oh, it's just growing pains, he'll be fine. A couple months later, still kind of clumsy, you know, kind of choking a little bit on his food. You know, this isn't, something's not right. Well, 2 years and 10 doctors later, they ended up at Columbia University. And a doctor looked at Michael and said, right away, I think I know what he has. I think he has this disease called Niemann-Pick Type C. It's rare, it's fatal, we don't know anything about it, there are no treatments, and it's genetic, so you need to test the rest of your children. And so on that day, and this is why we show this picture, right around that day when they're out there, they found out that 3 of their 4 children have this fatal disease and were going to pass away from it. So imagine what the Parseghians were facing at that time in 1994. There were only 2 scientists in the United States working on it. Nobody knew anything about this. We didn't understand the pathway, we didn't understand the genetics, and clearly there were no treatments. So they gathered themselves, they used Grandpa Era's name to start a foundation, and over time they've made great success. Over time they've raised over $60 million thanks to the generosity of so many people that are here. We discovered both these genes, MPC1 and MPC2, and we understand its pathways. What the disease is called a cholesterol storage disease. MPC, I won't go into, this is the second sciencey thing you're going to learn today. It transports cholesterol in and out of your cell. And when it's not functioning correctly, that cholesterol builds up in cells of like your central nervous system, and those cells start to die. That's why kids with this disease start to lose their ability to walk, talk, seizures are common, and they eventually will succumb to the disease, usually by the time they're teenagers. But since that time, like I said, we didn't know anything. I want to highlight 2 really critical things that have happened. One, I love telling people this. Their first conference was in Tucson in 1997. They had 2 scientists there. There were 8 total people there, and they sat at a table probably not much bigger at this table. This last year, we were in Tucson, we had over 185 scientists and clinicians there. I would actually argue there are more scientists and clinicians in the United States than there are patients with this disease. You hear me? Okay. That is how the impact that they've had. And we've also had 4 therapies. They've not just advanced their understanding of the disease, 4 therapies that have finished a phase 3 clinical trial. But during that time, there's also been some sorrow. There's been some tough times. We've lost Michael, Marcia, and Krista. We lost Michael just 2 days before his 10th birthday. We lost Marcia at her 16th birthday, or when she was 16 years old, and Krista at the age of 10. And if you go down to the grotto, there's actually a bench where you can see these plaques that memorialize them here on campus. If you came to me 3 years ago, I would have told you we are in a really dark spot in our community. We just had 2 therapies that were declined by the FDA that we thought would be approved, that we know that are helping these kids. In 2012, there was an advisory committee meeting for one of these therapies called Miplyffa, and what an advisory committee is a bunch of well-known scientists in a specific field. And when the FDA is not sure what to do, they ask them, and they voted 9-2 to approve this drug, and the FDA still said no. One of the therapies called cyclodextrin, which we know many of the children are on that are helping them, the FDA put a hold on that so no new patients could get in there, and 5 of the companies that were involved in NPC disease all went under. We were in a tough time. But I am very pleased to say the tides have turned. We are in a much better spot now than we were. And just about 5 hours ago, and if some of you got the announcement, we actually are excited to say that we had our first ever approval in the United States for a treatment of NPC disease. This is a huge. And one thing I promised to do, I bought this scotch 6 years ago. It's a really peaty scotch, so I love the smell and it makes my wife want to throw up. And I said, I'm not going to open it, I'm not going to keep drinking it until we got an approval. So today, I finally get to pour myself some of this delicious peaty scotch. And we're all going to have some of it. That is not the end of it. Remember that Miplyffa drug I mentioned? If you read the fine print here really closely, that also was approved today as a combination therapy. So not only do we get one drug approved today, we got 2 drugs approved today, all at the same time. So I have another glass right here. And that is not it. On Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, we have a 3rd therapy that is under review right now with the FDA. And I'm gonna go ahead and just pour myself another glass of scotch because I'm overly confident that it will also be approved. And since I can't drink all these 3, I'm gonna give one to Greg and one to Bart. And then Alan has promised me that we can all have the rest of it in a little bit. That's gonna be on your camera too, by the way. So, but at Notre Dame, we not only focus, we're more than just NPC disease, one rare disease. We kind of taken that model and we said, hey, we need to help more families. We need to help other families that are facing other rare diseases. So in 2008, we actually launched what was called our Bullard Parseghian Center, rightfully named after some generous donors in the Parseghian family, for rare diseases. And Greg Crawford, who again, I'll let him talk in just a few moments, and he was part of the founding of that center itself. And again, we launched in 2008. We have over 25 faculty working on these diseases, and we also have a Patient Advocacy Initiative as well as a minor that Barbara Calhoun here will kind of talk about. Actually, it's the first minor, I think, in the United States, and it has now over 58 students. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to our friends here to introduce our panelists to introduce themselves. So first is Greg Crawford, who is the current president of Miami University. He's been there since 2016, and formerly he was an associate provost as well as the dean of the College of Science at Notre Dame. So will you introduce yourself there, Greg?
Well, thanks. It's great to be back at Notre Dame. It's fun to be back for the football game, but it was just a thrill today to hear about the nature of this drug being approved, and so working so hard on it for so many years here at Notre Dame, and knowing the Parseghian family, and working with Cindy and Mike and Coach, it was just a thrill to hear about this. So big congratulations to all of you for that hard work and perseverance over the years. And so I've been away from Notre Dame now for 9 years, and having a lot of fun at Miami University, but I still ride my bicycle every day in the morning, and there's just kind of a day that bike doesn't remind me of the Parseghian family. So it's still so near and dear to my heart. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then, of course, I want to introduce Barbara Calhoun, who came to us in 2014. She's a nurse practitioner and then ended up working at our Rare Disease Center. And she actually was part of the team that founded and has now led this patient advocacy program in minor, and it's just blowing up on campus. So Barb, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I actually started with the Bullard Parseghian Center as an outreach coordinator in 2014. So I remember meeting maybe once or twice with you. And that was it, and then you were gone. So I'm interested to hear more about the bike story because I really wasn't a part of it. But I actually started with the center and working with bringing patients to the researchers and to the students, so the students could learn about the disease through the families that were affected by Niemann-Pick and other rare diseases. So since that time, the students have charged forward and told me they want more, and so we're giving them more. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm delighted to be here because this has been iconic in starting what is a very successful fund for Notre Dame.
So with the bike ride, I'm just going to jump right in it. And obviously, for those who've been around Notre Dame in the past, you know Greg has taken part of a bike ride to help raise funds for rare disease. So I'd love for him to just share the origin story of that and the impact that it has. Renata, this is the only picture you're going to be in, so don't worry. I don't have any more embarrassing photos, so you're all right. Go ahead.
What do you do?
I want you to talk about the origin of the bike ride.
So I started here at Notre Dame in, it was 2008, And even before I started, I was able to just run out to the conference on Niemann-Pick in Tucson. And so I was sort of growing up Catholic in Ohio. I was a big Notre Dame fan. My great uncle played for Newt Rockne, and so it was just something that we always came when I was growing up with my father. My uncle named Paul Harris. He'd only give us tickets to like Navy and Air Force in those days. He'd keep the USC tickets, but so we always came a couple of times a year, and so I had a real big affinity for the university. And then when I joined, I went down to Tucson to the Niemann-Pick conference, knowing that the Center for Rare Disease would report to me. And it was extraordinary. I didn't know the researchers yet in the College of Science, and then I got really super inspired by them, and it was just kind of neat to see what they were focused in on there. It was still very early on. And then at the end of the conference, Cindy, I met Cindy and Mike there, of course, Parseghian, but Cindy took the stage, and then she talked about her story. And it was like at that point that I knew I wanted to do something, and I didn't know what it was. I'm a physicist by training, and so I can kind of slide a mast on an inclined plane, but I can't do much more on the biology front. And so I wanted to do something since this center reported to me, and so I had thought about this, and then bike riding was my passion, so it just had this idea that I would ride my bike across the country with Renata, but I didn't tell her yet. And so I went to the provost and I said, I want to do this fundraiser. And I said, don't say no yet, let them hear me out. And then I talked about this ride and raising local awareness and money for Niemann-Pick. And so Tom Burrish was so supportive. He was a great boss. And so he let us do these treks during the summer. And so we started the first one in 2010, Renata and I did that. And then we rode across the country, and then when we were in cities or in urban areas, we'd do fundraisers with a lot of the Notre Dame alumni, of course, and raise money. And then we did lots of interviews across the country, both big and small newspapers, and on the TV and so forth. So we really were focused in on the fundraising and sort of raising awareness. So then, it just kept going on and on and on and on. And so 5 years later, I did my last ride. And it was just kind of fantastic to see sort of the progress and the kind of money raised. And I really felt that I could do something, even though it wasn't my area of science or specialty, but I could help fund those researchers and scientists that were fighting for a cure. So it was quite the times, I must say, and it was just sort of fantastic to have so much mission and purpose in my life, both as a dean and also as an individual. And then, knowing that I always thought I was going to play for Coach Parseghian growing up. So I got to play for his team anyway. It's just kind of extraordinary to get to know him so well while I was here. And then the inspiration of Cindy and Mike pushing this when they lost their own kids, but they kept persevering and pursuing that cure for all those other families. So it was quite the ride.
It was quite the ride. I still remember, he did this first ride, and he started in Tucson and ended in South Bend. And we were like, it's a lot of work, and we're thankful this is over, and never again. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, he walks into our office, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing another bike ride. Like, okay. Yeah, I think we can go a different route and stop at a bunch of new cities. Great. Good luck with that. And he's like, well, you have to plan it. And that's the thing you don't realize. You think the biking is the hard part, but that's not the hard part. The hard part is the person that I got to do all that stuff. But it actually has grown into a fantastic ride. And after even Greg left, we have students from the Esteemed Master's Program, which is an entrepreneurship master's program at Notre Dame, that have taken up this. And they continue to do the ride every year for a few days for us. But I do have one other question for you, Greg. Do you remember this moment and what this thing is?
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
Do you want to tell the story?
I'll tell the story. My story is different than your story. So I was halfway across the country in the middle of Iowa, and then when you're riding these routes, and even back then the technology wasn't too great to know where you were going, and so we got lost. But having said that, Sean was with me that one day, so he decided to come out and ride one day. So one day. And so like 10 miles, he's complaining the whole way. He's tired, he's hungry, he has to go to the bathroom nonstop. Complaining. And then we get lost in the middle of Iowa, and we're on these roads that we didn't know where we were at. And then this caterpillar thing starts following us. It was huge. And then Sean, I'm like, let's get out of here because I think we're on their property. And Sean's like, let's give ourselves up. No, let's just go. And then it became crystal clear that he was going to catch us. And all I could think of was like Criminal Minds, that show. And so we finally stopped because we were tired of trying to race this tractor following us. And then this ladder falls out, and this farmer guy comes down and he says, "You boys from Notre Dame?" And he said, "Yeah." And he's like, "My daughter goes to Notre Dame." And he goes, "I wanted to catch you, but you're going so fast, so I kept following you." And so he bought us lunch. So, small world.
That is the story. I'll stick to that part of the story. Other than the start that I was complaining, I was on it. All right, I'm gonna get you later. Don't worry. But okay, all right. But yeah, so that is how a lot of great stories on the ride every year. Different terrain, different people you meet, and it's just a fantastic way to kind of pitch in and help us with our fundraising efforts and the university's efforts to raise awareness for rare diseases. But I do want to switch over to Barb over here because she's right in the thick of this now with this new program that she started a few years ago. So can you talk a little bit about how you're engaged with rare disease and also about the new initiative that started?
So when I mentioned that I started in 2014, I was I had just moved here and decided that I was going to get out of patient practice and go do something different. So this job came up for an outreach coordinator for the Parseghian Center, and I jumped on it. And it really started off with a few things. I taught a couple classes in rare disease. I engaged the students with the researchers that were conducting work on Niemann-Pick Type C. And then I also helped patients with getting skin biopsies or blood work so that the researchers could utilize that. And when I was teaching the classes, it became evident that students really wanted to get more clinical research experience. So our classes were always booked. They were always full. We had waiting lists. We could not get enough space for them. So I got to thinking, we need to streamline this somehow and engage more with the patients and the researchers. So in 2021, I incorporated those two classes into a minor in science and patient advocacy. And the goal of it was to educate the students about different rare diseases, the clinical aspects, but also the molecular, the genetic aspects. And we generally start with Niemann-Pick Type C. So like I was saying to Pat Sarp, we have half of our class this semester, they're reviewing records, de-identified records of patients. Half of them have non-ketotic hyperglycemia, and the other half have Niemann-Pick Type C. And they look at these records, and it educates them about the disease, but it also gives them a little bit of background about medicine, the terminology, the labs, what does it mean to have a test result such as they read. So that kind of starts the minor off. We teach them about the disease, and then we ask them to apply the knowledge to helping patients that have rare diseases. And we started some really cool programs. We have a patient partnership where the students actually partner with the patients over a semester and learn from them directly, and then together develop a way to tell that patient story. And so one of the things that I think you've touched upon is the fact that there are so few resources and services for patients. And out of the almost 10,000 rare diseases, only 5% have a treatment. So these families are seeking so much information, and they have so little to go to. So our students are helping with that. We partner with organizations such as the fund to do projects that need to be done. And we've done that with 7 different organizations to help them build their capacity to help their patients that have the particular rare disease. For instance, like Friedreich's ataxia. The students worked with the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance to develop an international program so that they could engage better with those that had the disease across the world and not just the country. So our students are doing some incredible things that actually have charged them to want to do even more. So this program has been unbelievable, and through this we've formed partnerships with biotech companies who want to know how we're training them so that they then can utilize these students in the careers of their future. So it's become an incredibly satisfying and innovative way to teach students how to be advocates. And the one thing that I think is the best part of it is they leave here knowing the diseases. If they become physicians or pharmacists or genetic counselors, they know what it means to have Niemann-Pick Type C. They know what it means to have these diseases we study, and it also helps them realize that they need to do just a little bit to help each and every one of these families. So I love my job. I've said many times, you don't have to pay me, I'm good. Just kidding. But it's so rewarding. And we're just growing. So I have to correct you. We have 82 students in mine, not 50.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I know you love your job and you said you do it for free, but I have to admit, and I actually feel really bad about this, they gave her like the smallest office, and my office is right across from there, and it's gigantic.
And you have a window.
And I have a window, I have a little bar area, and an exercise bike, and then she actually had to have a picture of a window put on her, and I feel, but I'm definitely not going to switch, so don't worry about that. But I love what you said about interactions between patients and the students. I remember when I took my role here at the Parseghian Fund, I knew there would be research. Okay, I have a research background. I knew there would be fundraising. I had a fundraising background, but interacting with families with diseases that are devastating and fatal. That was probably the most nervous I was. How would they almost accept me, someone with, to be blunt, as of right now, 2 very healthy daughters? This is what kind of kept me up at night. I was nervous of how they would accept me into this community, but to be honest, it's the best part. I love working with the families. A couple things that we do is that we actually bring families to our annual conference that was referenced in Tucson, and it's incredible. So you have these, practically National Academy scientists up there speaking, and you have a bunch of scientists and postdocs and researchers, and then you have families raising their hand asking questions. And the community and the scientists actually love it as well. So, quick story that a few years ago we were at our conference, and there was a mom with a 6-month-old with a Niemann-Pick. And we had our keynote speaker. He's from Harvard. He's Howard Hughes Fellow, National Academy member. He's up there presenting, and the little boy started acting up, started crying. And the guy looked over, and he looked at him and said, "Oh, do you have a question?" And he goes, "Don't worry about it. I have 5 kids. I love kids." And it was that moment that I knew the interaction between the families and the scientists was so important. We also try to bring some of the families to campus as much as we can. We had Ryan here last 2 weekends ago. Fortunately, he had to see that game, but they had a blast other than that with us. And then this is my wife and I. We're actually in Epcot Center in Disney with the Marco Glisi family. They have 2 boys with Niemann-Pick Type C. We've actually not just get to know these families, we've become really close with them. They've become some of our closest friends and supporters. One thing you'll notice that you don't see our kids because we went to Disney, we didn't take them. So, yeah, we're terrible. So I do want to switch and just kind of talk about, the impact the families have had on our research efforts and our advocacy efforts, and move over to Greg and talk about, some of the families that have impacted the work that you have done or on the ride that you have met. If you can tell a few stories for us.
Yeah, so it was one of the years that we did, and we decided that we would still do the fundraisers in the evenings, but we'd also meet along the way, and we planned our route such that every stop we would stop and see a Niemann-Pick child. And so, we got to sort of meet all these different kids with Niemann-Picks in different stages and progressions of the disease. There was kind of the funny stories with the family, what they tell you, and the heartbreaking stories that you hear. And also we met with parents along the way who also had lost their child to Niemann-Pick. And so they were just always so appreciative of the Parseghians and sort of what the Notre Dame and the Parseghians had done for the Niemann-Pick even when they lost their child. So it was really, truly inspiring. And I think it meant a lot to me as a dean here to be able to do that, and also to be able to have the center here at Notre Dame to work with those families, because it added this whole new dimension of what scientists do. Sometimes it's the white coat and the dark lab kind of picture that you might see if you Google what a scientist looks like. But truly here what was going on was this interaction, this cross-collaboration with scientists across all different fields, but also pulling in the families. And so I thought it was just kind of an extraordinary model, and I think other universities should look at that kind of model to see how to do that, because it involved patients and doctors and researchers, and also an institution that had a big passion and a mission to get a cure for Niemann-Pick.
And Barb, the same with you. I love this photo. This was on our newsletter. So Barb and Katrina, who also works with her, because we got so large, we had a child care facility, during the presentations, so parents could take their kids, drop them off, and then come and spend a little more time listening to the scientists. And we were trying to find somebody to house it, to manage it, and Barb just raised her hand and said, we'll do it. And so, and had a blast. So, Barb, if you can talk about the impact that families have on you.
I'm telling you, the families are the heart of my work. And that opportunity has been the most rewarding experience, because we are just there to play. And we do kickball in the lobby, and we take little excursions outside, but the kids just want to be kids. And that has been an outstanding experience. And hopefully next year we'll be able to bring students with us that can also share in that experience. Quick shout out, Katrina Conrad is in the way back. She is the program coordinator, Dynamo, for the Patient Advocacy Initiative. And she also is in the picture and helped with the kids. And but the thing about families are they provide you with a sense of not only inspiration, but urgency. And I think, when I meet with families, they inspire me and fuel my energy to be dedicated to them. Their realities are so many and so difficult. And that gives us the purpose of what we can do for them. Just a little something is a big difference in the lives of the patients that we work with. And that can be, just recently I met a local family who adopted a son. He has had some developmental delays, learning issues. And so they went to a geneticist, and lo and behold, their adopted child has a rare disease. It is so rare that there is not anything published in the literature about it. So now we are on this path of trying to help this family navigate the unknowns of so many things. What is he going to do tomorrow? Will he be able to talk like the other kids? Will he be able to keep up in school? Can he play sports? So when I get in situations like that, it empowers me to just go to it right with them. And so in the 2 weeks that I've known this family, I have met with them twice. They have met with an expert in Boston Children's Hospital. They met Liz Berry-Kravis, who is the physician that treats all of the Niemann-Pick Type C kids, and has even met the dean, Santiago Schnell. And that is what's so important about this rare disease center and the way that we do things here at Notre Dame, we get moving and we get everyone involved. And this family has had more information in the last 2 weeks from our kind of coordinating efforts to get them where they need to be. So I'm astounded at their resilience, but it also charges us to want to do more. And I think you all agree, when you meet these families, you want to do it. So I love it.
That's the beauty of some of the work we're doing in our center. So we have some scientists here right now, so like Chris Patsky, Kevin's here, Rich, Paul. Paul was actually some of the brainchild of the original center itself. We want to be a home for when anybody comes to us with a rare disease that nobody's heard about. And I'm talking, you know, there's not even a foundation. There's a Facebook page of 40 families dealing with this. We want them to come here at Notre Dame and say, we're going to help you. We're going to teach you how to organize. We're going to teach you how to fundraise. We all have scientists here that will help you out. That's one of our big time goals here. And then, you know, obviously the work that we're doing with our students that Barb's doing is amazing. And so I do want to bring up, because we are trying to grow our center, we're trying to collaborate more. And we have the president of Miami University here, so we want to be able to collaborate with you. Can you discuss, Greg, some ideas that you might have about collaborations that we could with our center here?
Yes, it's really inspiring to see how far you've come. I mean, it's amazing. And this drug announcement today, what a day. You know, congratulations with that. We at Miami have made big investments in our mental health sciences over the past few years, and it's happened in nursing, and now we have a physician associate program. And we also have, much like Notre Dame, just a huge and very successful pre-med program. Where even though we don't have a medical school, we make a lot of doctors. So I'm really inspired by your program. I think we got to figure out a way to emulate.
We got to package it and send it out.
Yeah, because I think it would be great for, we do a lot of interprofessional training, but across the board with our nurses and our PAs and our pre-med students, I think that would be fantastic. Then on the research front, we have a lot of research. We have various NIH funding profiles of our faculty members, and I think it'd be kind of neat to kind of look into some of these cholesterol lowering applications that we do to see how it might fit in there. So we don't have necessarily any rare disease that we're working on right now, but I think that some of the other bigger diseases, how that may connect, and how you may find drugs that could be repurposed like you have in that way. So we look forward to working with you a little bit more.
Good, we're going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Barb, what do you think? Are you going to?
I think that if we could get every university student that is going into a healthcare field on the radar of what is rare and how we can help, I think we would change the whole trajectory of time to diagnosis. You know, families wait 5 to 7 years to get diagnosed with their kiddos because no one has seen the disease. So if we could educate our future doctors and our future pharmacists, then that will change the way that we approach diagnosing. So I think that, along with the research, we could do phenomenal things. Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk about rare disease, this is a personal thing for me. You know, in the 70s, it wasn't Niemann-Pick Type C or A and B, it was Niemann-Pick. Then we realized that there's A, B, and C, and then we realized that C is actually much different than A and B, and then we realized that Niemann-Pick Type C is caused by 2 different genes, the MPC1, MPC2. So even as rare as it is, it's actually, they're different, it's even rarer in some forms. And I think what we're learning with rare diseases is even more common diseases, such as, I mentioned before, even just something like breast cancer. It's actually, there are different, mutations in different genes, so there's a lot of rare cancers, and they're becoming more rare. So this is why it's really important for us to be working in that space. With that, I said that we'd go to about 5:15 today, and we have a reception out there with some drinks, and it's a home football week, and I'm sure you'd rather be doing that than listening to me. But I do want to conclude, and we'll have a few questions, and see if Greg, if you have any stories you want to tell from the bike ride. I have one story about him that I'm definitely going to tell, but I don't know if you have any more you want to bring up.
Well, it's interesting when you're on the road for 30 days over a summer and you're going from city to city and you're seeing a lot of nothing in between. In America, sometimes between the cities, there's a lot of farmland in between. But you just meet a lot of people, and there's, the funny stories that happen, like the number of Notre Dame tattoos. And Joe's lessons learned was never to ask to see them. And then there's the heartfelt stories, and then I guess the one that I'll share with you was, I called it the day of the biggest gift. So Renata and I, we were in Texas, and it was hot, and we had stopped at a gas station to get something to drink. And then as we were sitting there, we had a van with Notre Dame on it, and then people sign it. And so we had the whole van signed as we stopped at different places. And this little boy, he was probably, 4 or 5 years old, had come up to us, and he was curious. And he was like, what we were doing. And so I had explained to him, we're riding our bikes across America. He's like, all the way across? I'm like, yeah. And he was just curious where we were from, and he didn't know where Indiana was at, and so we had to explain all that. And he's like, well, what do these sick kids have? And I told him they have this disease, and there's no cure for it, so you can't have a pill for it and get better. And then he kind of asked what we were doing, and then I told him we were raising money to help these kids, and then also we were trying to raise awareness, so making sure everybody knew what this was. And we shared it with him, and so now he knew. And it was just quite interesting. He said, well, what are you raising money for? I said, well, these kids are gonna get help, and we're gonna try to find a cure for them. And so he reached in his pocket, and he pulls out a handful of change, and he gave it to me. It was
Every little bit.
It was the best 50 cents I ever got.
Every little bit. Now we have a approved treatment for MPC. He was part of that effort. So I'll just finish with, I have many stories I could tell, and I have to keep this PG. So I'll tell my last story about Greg. And I always used to say, there are 4 stages of Greg Crawford when you're on the bike ride, when you're doing these events. And on the last year we did this, we started out on Long Island. And the first stage of Greg Crawford is usually anxious and distracted. So he starts out, and we have an event, and he's just ready to go. He goes, and you can just see when we're at a dinner the night before, he just eats the food within 5 minutes. Like, can we just talk so I can get it? I gotta get up and go to this. And okay, we understand that. And then by the time he gets to about South Bend, he gets about crabby and annoyed. That's when we're dealing with crabby and annoyed Greg. And then when you get right around Colorado, that's when you get grumpy and whiny Greg. That's when he's just like, I don't know if I want to go tonight. You have to. You told the provost, we raised money, we got to get out there. And he's like, I don't know, this is hard. I'm like, too bad, baby, let's keep going. And then by the time we get to the end, this year we had finished at our Parseghian Classic at Pebble Beach. We just don't talk to each other. And I still remember this story. It was the last year of the ride. And I met Greg somewhere right around Tahoe. Actually, it was Sacramento, and we were in Sacramento. And we were going to San Francisco. And by then, total grumpy and whiny Greg. And we had an event that evening, and we had a couple of our top donors riding with us. Greg's like, I just got to get there. I can't ride with anybody else. Can you just do, like, no, you're here. This is part of the mission. You said you're going to have to ride. He's like, well, if I'm riding with him, you're riding with him. And of course, I wasn't the whiny, grumpy one. I was in good spirits. I wasn't complaining about going to the bathroom. But so we just started riding, and you wouldn't know this, but the tallest mountain in the world is between Sacramento and San Francisco. It must have been 30, 40, 50,000 feet high that we had to ride. It was terrible. It was terrible. Maybe 100,000, whatever it is. And we start going up this, there's about 6 of us. We start going up. And I mean, it goes on for a mile, and maybe 40 miles, just straight up there. And you're just, every time you get around a bend, you just be like, okay, we gotta be at the top. And then there's just another 50 miles that you gotta keep just going up. And of course we start to separate, and Greg is mad at me because I'm making him ride with us. Everybody's kind of scattered, and he just won't talk to me. So eventually, after all of this, after going up 100 straight miles, straight up in the air, I get to the top, and it was the biggest accomplishment And he still won't talk to me. I'm like, look, we have to have one picture. Just one picture to say that we did this, act like you like me, and then we can hate each other for the rest of the week. And this was that picture we took. There we are, right at the top. And the best part is, honestly, the next 3 days we had events every night. We wouldn't talk to each other. We finished at Pebble Beach, and Greg just looks at me and goes, and I go, yeah. And we hug it out and it's over. We're best friends again. So that was it. But it really was a great time. It was very impactful, and I can't thank you enough for being here, especially because it's not just, it helped us raise funds, but it also inspired us to keep that going. We still have it going with students. And Barb, obviously it's wonderful that you're here, just the impact that you're making. With that, I will open it up for a few questions. If anybody has any questions, any more, go right ahead, Frank.
How did the connection, it starts in 1994, how did Notre Dame decide to get involved?
So clearly, so back in 1994, other than the name Parseghian, we weren't really doing much rare disease research here. And then again, right about 2008, we had started our center, and as I mentioned before, I think Paul's here, he was a big part of it, and Greg was a big part of that. But there still wasn't really working too much on NPC. I think Cindy Parseghian had some conversations with Paul. And so we started doing some work there. But a few years later, unfortunately, the children had passed away. And Cindy and Mike Parseghian, what usually happens after we see with families that lose their children, they sort of take a step back. They go, rightfully so, they put in a ton of time. A lot of these kids take 24-hour care, and they sort of leave the community a little bit. But they didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep things going. They still had an external foundation based in Tucson, Arizona. But they said, we've lost our children. We're getting closer to retirement age. We still want to be active in the fundraising. We still want to be active in some of these areas, but we just don't want to run the day-to-day operations. So that's when they worked with the Notre Dame and the College of Science and said, what if we actually merge our foundation back to the university? And that's where they asked me to run it. And the reason it's called the Parseghian Fund versus a foundation is because you can't legally have a foundation inside of a university. It's just a little name thing that you have to do. But that's how it started here, and that's how we've just grown with our rare disease efforts in partnership with the Bullard Parseghians.
Thank you.
Sean, so $60 million, great news from the FDA.
Start over. All right, Sean. $60 million. Great news from the FDA. Brilliant researchers working in labs around the world. And you see the end at all. Because we need to get this over with. You need to move on to another rare disease. Our objective is to cure the disease. And you, in any way, see the end.
Yeah. So I'll talk about NPC and then talk about the rare diseases. That's right. So NPC, so this is a big win. We're getting other, hopefully, wins. These are going to delay the progression of this disease. And not only that, it's going to give better quality of life to these children, while the families are bad. But they aren't here. I want to go back to, I can just go back here. No, I just did. Hold on one second. Here, this is Alec Kujaya. Alec was diagnosed probably when he was 10 years old. He's now 26. He's on one of these therapies. And you know he has the disease, but he should have passed away when he was 50. 26, he works at Menards. He tells jokes, he's hilarious, he's an amazing character. So these therapies are slowing the progression, but you're right, they aren't cures, they aren't those game changers. We're now on the hunt for those game changers. And we have a couple big programs. A lot of people hear about genetic technologies like gene therapy. That is an avenue that can go, and a lot of people are investing resources, and we've funded some of that work before, but there's still some challenges with gene therapy, especially with creating the vector, getting it to all the cells in the body. But one of the new programs we've launched is, I don't really want to get into too much of the science, because I said I only give you two sciencey things today, and this would be the third one, but we know that small molecules are actually a way that we can stabilize, like when the protein itself mutates, it becomes, it doesn't function and it gets degraded. We're on the hunt for what we call small molecule stabilizers that actually bind to the mutant MPC protein that will allow it to still traffic to where it needs to go and still function. And that program that we've launched is actually working very well. Another disease group called, a rare disease called cystic fibrosis did a similar model. And those children, those patients were passing away in their early 20s. Now they're living into their 50s and even 60s. So we're doing a similar type of model with them, and we're actually going to try to apply it to multiple other rare diseases itself. And so I think we're working really fast, and I think we might be in a clinic with some of these small molecules within 2 years. And Cindy will say cautiously optimistic, I say overly optimistic, that these can be those game changers that we're looking for, and we can apply that to other rare diseases. Somebody asked Greg a question. I don't know. Anything else? Well, with that, I think we'll conclude. Thank you again both for being here. We have some parting gifts for you, or I think we only got one for Greg. I don't think you get one, Barb. I don't know.
That's not true.
Oh, you got one for Barb. Well, I do have a special one for Greg. We broke some trademarks here. This is a bench from the stadium when they took out the benches. And it actually has, you're a Parseghian with Notre Dame, and I totally ripped this from the internet. Don't tell your licensing folks. And it has coach's stats on there, so I want to get that to you. This gift here. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy, who will close us out.
Well, this is great. This is a wonderful gift. Our first ride, we would go to the stadium and run stairs for Nada and I to get ready for it, just to get ready for the hills. And then Coach Parseghian came over and they were interviewing him, and he was sitting on the stadium and going up and down, and they were doing an interview with him, and they said, "What do you think of Gregory P?" And he goes, "I think they're crazy." So this is great. It reminds me of him.
So thank you, Barb and Greg, for both being part of our panel today, and thank you, Sean, and congratulations for the great news that you received today. Barb, the flowers on the table are your parting gift, so thank you so much. And then we are running a contest before or during every Football Friday science talk that we have this year. And so we did a little random number generator for those of you who submitted your name. And the winner of today's prize, which is this lovely College of Science pad folio, is Jessica Stewart. Congratulations, Jessica. Thank you for coming. And Sean, do you want to invite everyone to the party?
Yes, we have cocktails and some hors d'oeuvres outside. You can continue to talk to us about rare disease and make fun of Greg on the bike ride. And then we also he brought some of these Coach Parseghian statues. They have the cradle coaches and one of the statues out there as a gift for all of the attendants. So please continue, so stay around for a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my goodness.